This is the Neurosurgery Podcast. Welcome back to the Neurosurgery Podcast. Today we are joined again by Dr. Christian Bowers. For our listeners who may be intermittent audience members, Dr. Bowers was on the show about a month ago now, 5-6 weeks back, talking about a really exciting topic. We'll link to that episode in the show notes for this conversation, the ARCS calculator, trying to make some sense of this ever-exploding publication list we're seeing on the applications to neurosurgery each year, especially now that we've lost the step score. And we really got into the weeds a little bit, into the nitty gritty, and into both of our passions about trying to make that process a little more honest and a little more fair, especially to the applicants on that conversation. But we will let those sleeping dogs lie, although we're very much of a mind on that. But Dr. Bowers, thanks for coming back. I think we have an equally, if not more exciting and potentially field-changing topic to talk about today. But in case anyone was under a rock, missed that episode, please take a moment and say hello to everybody watching and listening.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the time. I think that's a perfect summary and intro into this topic. And I think when I ended up switching kind of jobs and I had a little bit of downtime, it really helped me kind of take a step back. In neurosurgery, you're so busy getting into neurosurgery, especially now compared to when I was, I actually matched and got into neurosurgery with zero research experience, which I think would be pretty tough, if not impossible to do nowadays. And you get into this, you're trying to race to get in, and then you're kind of racing through residency, and then you're racing, to get to your fellowship, and you're racing to get your boards passed and establish yourself as an attending. And you're racing pretty soon, if you're not careful, you're racing through a good chunk of your life. And so I think when I had this time, a couple months to slow down for a second, and I'd really been thinking about these topics, the arms race control score was kind of this quick fix to kind of address the problem. But we'll talk about it a little bit tonight. Really, the it became apparent to me that we had a real problem with just in general with fraud within academia, and there was a bunch of things that happened at the same time at once. So right around this time, the president of Harvard, the president of Stanford were both let go for plagiarism charges. I had seen I'd worked with residents and med students exclusively for, this would have been my first 7 years at this point in my career, nonstop. And so I'd seen some little, some things amongst the medical students and with residents of people accusing other people of not doing work, stuff like that. So there's kind of some of that going on. There was this background of this Harvard Stanford president, which is pretty prominent position in academia, two of the top positions, president of these major universities, that had stepped down for plagiarism charges that were years before. And it was kind of we're all at the same time that ChatGPT and AI was going from something kind of started hearing about to people were actually using it on their computers. And so all of this kind of became this perfect storm for me, just kind of thinking of there's really a better way that we can kind of eliminate this massive problem. And so that's kind of the angle that I approached this from with this project, which is really the company that I founded is called Triple Helix, and it's a work attribution verification product, and it was really designed and focused on fixing this problem in academia where people do work and they don't get credit for it. I think everyone on this podcast that's been involved with some research has seen that, where people that are junior, whether that's international medical graduates, med students, junior residents do a bunch of work on a paper and get pushed off. And they've also seen a lot of honorary authorship, which is, I would say, become standard in a lot of places. So Department X publishes a spine paper, so all the faculty end up on that paper. And this is just kind of the world that it's kind of become that way, is kind of the standard. And I think that's not doesn't do us favors within the field. I think there's a better way of doing it, and people should get credit for the work that they do. And that's kind of what drove this.
And Dr. Bowers, before we dive into this product and the company, which you were gracious enough to take the time recently to kind of give me the pitch and the overview of it, it's amazing just to kind of frontline that for everybody who's about to hear about what you're building. But let's take a couple of minutes to talk about the problem that we're going to discuss the solution for, because this could be a series of conversations unto itself. And it's something that we've talked about a lot on the show over the years, but I like to think that maybe one or two new people start listening each year as they make their way into and through medical school. And what you're describing, Dr. Bowers, is a very real phenomenon. How, common is it? How ubiquitous is this problem in our field? Not quantifiable, but when I was in medical school, there were a lot of good-natured people with good intentions who, you hear stories about these groups that just they put all their friends on the same papers so their numbers go up. And that was even back when we had step scores, and so the publication number wasn't as big of an issue, like we talked about with the ARCS calculator.
Yep.
But this is a thing that happens. And just to reiterate, the standing disclaimer billboard message of me and Dr. Wang on this podcast for going on 6 years now:
Huh.
don't do that. Be
Yeah.
honest always. And that means not just don't obviously don't steal work from people and don't discredit them, but we're talking about the good nature, like the white lie side of things.
Yeah.
Don't offer to put your friends on papers just to help them out, quote unquote, because you're increasing the noise and decreasing the signal in the system. But the most important message that we always say, and a new year is coming with new interns who are busy but still want to get papers in that first year, if offered, just say no
Yeah.
politely, respectfully. I was in that position. I've been offered to have my names put on stuff that I didn't contribute to. If somebody offers, my response is always, how can I meaningfully contribute? Or
Yeah.
yes, I'd love to be a part of this if I can meaningfully contribute. Can I make you some figures? Can I write the discussion? Can I edit and help with the submission project? Find a way that you and your heart feel that you really did something. Otherwise, just don't let them put your name on it because it's a slippery slope.
Absolutely. I think that's the best way to do it. And I think that's where you can really make a difference. Cause I think the harder one is when you're the med student or you're the person and you're instructed from a superior, because there's a big asymmetry in power in neurosurgery. And you're instructed from a superior to put all these people on a paper or people on a paper that you had nothing to do with it. And you know, that is kind of where the genesis of some of this came from, of being able to, it's hard to push back in this against the system. And as if you're the med student, the intern, and the
Yeah,
chair of the department tells you to do X, I'm not telling anyone they should stand up and tell the chair of the department they're dishonest.
right.
They shouldn't
You
do
got
it.
you got to win the war even if you lose a battle.
Yeah. So I think,
Sometimes,
and I don't
sometimes.
want them to. I want them to. It's not your job as the med student to like tell the chair of neurosurgery what to do. I'm not saying a chair would do that. We're just talking
Yeah,
in generalities here. But I
right.
think I think this product was a way that I saw that we could or this fix. I saw that there was a need
Yeah,
for
and so like I just said, if someone offers to do that for you, what I just said was respond in a way or contribute such that you know in your heart that you meaningfully contributed. But gosh, wouldn't it be nice if there was a way to quantify objectively how people contributed to papers? Gee, uh, any ideas about that?
Yeah, we'll jump into that for sure. I think what I didn't
Yeah,
understand, this part I understood really well because I lived in this world and I saw it with
yeah.
med students and I came up through that system. The part I didn't really realize was, the author of Freakonomics, that a lot of people have read that book. He has a podcast, and so in 2024 in January, and then this January in 25, he did a two-part series. He updated it in 25, and it really dived into this whole world of academic fraud. And I didn't know, outside of neurosurgery and clinical medicine, how extensive this was in sociology and in the sciences. I had already submitted my patent for what we're going to talk about tonight, but like then it really reaffirmed for me. And part of the reason, if anyone, I had never had experience with startups or with business and I'd always been on like the pure academic side, but I put over $50,000 of my own money in this. But part of the reason I did was because the arms race control score had such a great reception and it was so well received. We were invited to give the talk at Senior Society, at CNS, and everyone was signing on and using it all as their fields, that it gave me a lot of confidence that, as we get into this product, that there was this, I knew it before reading the papers and like writing, coming up with that with Dr. Kogan, but there was even greater than that. There was this huge need, and even outside of our medical fields and in all of science in general. And so it was within that system and living in this world where you see the problems, and all of a sudden this technological innovation came along that lets us do something about it. Is kind of, it's a timing thing, right? And it worked out in that sense, to kind of come up with a need for it. So the basic idea of the product is, and the tool is that essentially when I have a lab that meets every Monday night. We have tons of students. We keep a track of everything, doing different projects. This tool allows you to from the beginning, it just tracks the work that everyone's doing on the project. So the senior author gets a screen, like a dashboard, and in real time, as you're working on projects, this tracks who's doing what parts of the projects they're doing. And so as every day that senior author can, look at that product, see where things are at. And it's a pretty simple like version. It's a software, and if you're using a tablet, a laptop, it has to have a camera because it has to be able to do a facial recognition verification that you're the person that's actually doing it. That's an important part of it. It can't be cheated. You have to have a system that's foolproof. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
know, people will cheat. Unfortunately, there's a lot of money in all of this world of neurosurgery and in publishing. It's a $28 billion industry, which is massive. That's a huge number, and so there's real dollars. There's real implications to all this, and so on the user interface, it intermittently takes just screenshots. The background doesn't ever get included. So, but that's the facial recognition with the person. But then, as you're working on projects, it's a deep learning model, natural language processing AI tool that tracks the work that's being done. And I think you'll have some of the figures to show kind of with this, but as
Mhm.
people are working, it just keeps track of it. And the first iteration, what we call, as I've learned in this business world, the MVP, the minimal viable product, is really an on-off type of system. So if I get a phone call, I'm on call and I step away, or I'm taking my phone call and I'm not doing the work, it just doesn't track that time. And then if I turn on the game, or let's say I want to read ESPN.com or the New York Times, it just doesn't track that time when I'm not working on it. And then when I'm working on it, it uses a really kind of what we patented was the application of deep learning AI in this tool using this intermittent screenshot analysis, which is like instead of recording start to finish, it just takes rapid intermittent screenshots all the way through, and it uses that to kind of know when you're working and when you're not working on research. It's actually pretty easy for with this technology to like do that. And so by the end of that, you've got a project and you know exactly who spent what amount of time on which part of the projects. And so the idea here is that it really protects, you should use it whenever you're working on the project, because then the company's called Triple Helix. Obviously double helix is the building block of life for DNA. Triple Helix is really the building block of this digital work product that you've created, the team has created. And so it tracks everyone's contributions. And now all of a sudden at the end, if the med student, the intern's done 90% of the work, and they don't have to be in this awkward situation of like trying to like feel like they should speak up or whatever, because the senior author signs off on the authorships, and it'll flag it if he tries to put his first author who maybe spent 10 minutes on the paper on the project. It'll identify that. And so this first version, which is going to be quite effective at stemming a lot of the main problem, it tracks and verifies all the contributions from start to finish. And that way we really are just trying to document what people are doing. And that really shouldn't be very controversial, because we should all be excited about a system that is able to beat the cheating and the stuff that's not real that's going on, and really just track the work people have done. So there's a lot of implications for education for residents, because as you start working on projects, it takes you more time, and it always analyzes at the beginning and end of a work session what you do. So when you're at the beginning, it takes you a lot of time to produce this paragraph that gets shredded right in your first paper. But as time goes on, we track the percentage of your contributions to the final submitted, accepted, published product, and that increases as time goes on. You become a better researcher. So there's a lot of implications within education, within neurosurgery, within faculty evaluations. But at the end of the day, the simple way to think of this is just a way to track who's doing what on a project and to count for
Yeah.
people's work.
Yeah. So, I'm going to say something that anyone who works with me at Rush is going to immediately laugh at and call BS. But
Oh, good.
I probably have a personality that is somewhat similar to many people in neurosurgery. Anyone who works with me would laugh at that. But the aspect of my personality that I'm talking about is that I'm pretty individualistic. And
Hmm.
maybe more so than most, like when I go to the airport now and the TSA wants to take a picture of my face, I defer that. And I'm one of
Yeah.
these people. I'm actually, for someone who grew up reading science fiction and works in an OR with robots and
Mhm.
navigation and stuff, I'm kind of wary of new
Yes.
technology. And so
Logical creep.
when you first, yeah, I get creeped out.
Yeah.
And when you first told me about this product, I immediately, my hair stood up and I thought,
Yeah.
it's taking my picture, it's looking at my face, I'm being tracked. And I want to tell you that the more you told me about the product and I thought about it, I kind of got over that hair raising, bristling against it, because what I want to reinforce at this point in the conversation, in case anyone else
Yeah.
was reacting the way I initially did and thought, oh, it's the camera's watching me and stuff. that's why the framing of this conversation and the need for a tool like this is so important, because it's not like everything's hunky dory and, oh, here's just a new way for Big Brother to watch you while you're working at home. There is a real problem here. There
Yeah.
is a real problem with misattribution of the work that goes into a $1 billion industry published by our friends across the pond. And the person and the persons being protected by this product are the little guy, the IMG, the medical student, the intern, who are putting hours and hours in with the hope of getting paid back later down the line, maybe on somebody's word of honor. And as you say, if we're all doing the right thing and we're all working hard, we should want that to be tracked honestly. And this isn't like it would be an easy way to try to draw a loose analogy to the, if you would give up a little liberty for some security, you deserve neither. It's not, because we're not being tracked or watched for the sake of being tracked or watched so that the senior author can crack a whip. It's just a record of who did what on the record objectively. And
It's
so anyone who's listening to this and thinking the camera's watching me and somebody's going to have my minutes quantized, it's, at least as you've described it to me, this is not a tool for someone to crack a whip, but rather like punching a time card.
And you exactly, and you actually control when it goes on or off. So it's
Hmm.
not like it's doing things you don't want it to do. Every time it's on, it's you have to turn it on and it blinks up in the corners so that you know it's recording, and you just turn it off if you don't want it on. So it's really just to track the work that's being done, and it really is to help everybody at the end of the day have an accurate system that really records, what documents is a better way of thinking of it, the work that they're
Yeah.
doing, and then it kind of takes that other part, that CD part, out of it. And it's to help, if you're being honest, it's really to help you as the researcher. And it
Yeah.
also provides protection to you forever going forward. So at the end, there's a blockchain encrypted 3 copies. One state goes with the manuscript to the journal. One stays with the senior author, and one stays. Our company has one on file, and those can never be altered. And they are going to be protecting of everyone that did the work on there. And so, in that sense, I think this is really, a tool that you use to help yourself. And for all of the issues we have in academia with honesty in publications, if you use Triple Helix for every part of the paper, we can track every single thing that goes on that paper, everything that's written in there. There's a feature that if you click the button, it shows you which authors contributed which parts to the manuscript, and you can follow it backwards to where the ideas originated. So let me give you another example where it helps med students. I've had tons of great ideas in my papers that really came from the med students, and they get credit as like being authors on it. But now we can actually attribute those amazing ideas to the students that came up with it. And it happens more often than not that a lot of these wonderful ideas and insights come to these papers come from the non-attending. Especially the
Yeah.
more busy the attending is, and the more the attending is supervising with a framework, like I tend to do with these, because I have lots of frailty projects or whatever, the more these individual researchers, these students, these residents are coming up with these brilliant insights. And now we can evaluate them. Forget about our, not forget about ARCs, but like, let's just shift gears to like, let's really evaluate our residents as researchers, as how they're developing and what kind of individual brilliant contributions they're making to these products, to these papers, and to these ideas. And so it's a whole change in it's going to have ramifications for patent law, and how that, and how that plays and how that affects things. And really, we hope that it'll help. I'll give you one more example. Like, I was talking recently to a prominent member of one of a top 20 program in the brain cancer research space. And they were saying that one of the problems is that nobody wants to share samples. They need to increase the N. Nobody wants to share it because you only have like one senior author. So we don't have the figures right here. You'll have it on the when it's presented, but we basically could do like a circular authorship where everyone, instead of like having a first and last, you could have a shared authorship, and then it has the parts and the hours and what you produced like in the inside of that in a graph. So just the point is, maybe nowadays it's a little bit different in some situations as to how we attribute work and what's done versus what was done 500 years ago in Europe and the medieval times when we're first documenting things. Like, maybe in some situations we can have a different way of tracking authorship and contributions where it becomes more collaborative, because people just want to get credit for what they're doing, and it doesn't have to be one winner as a senior author, so to speak.
Yes, instead of doing it how they did it 500 years ago in
Yeah,
Europe, we do it 1500 years ago and go back to the round table.
there you
Um,
go.
but
Exactly. I
but
like
yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say one of the more interesting things that we talked about when you showed me this product initially was some of the theoretical or potential applications even outside of academia. Because again, just to be clear, which I guess I should have said at the beginning, this is not a commercial. This is not an advertisement. This is
Yeah,
not
yeah,
sponsored, and that's why I wanted to frankly voice the concerns I had when I first heard about this product that I kind of thought about and even wrestled with before discussing it with you because I am wary and leery of things that track us and quantize us in our time. But as I told you, the more you showed it to me and I thought about it, it does seem to be an empowering and protective thing from the bottom up. And like you said, you can turn it on or turn it off.
yeah.
Um, but then as we talked more, you told me about theoretical applications even outside of academia and tracking us writing papers in neurosurgery because as you think about this, you can start to consider, well, how else do people sit down at a computer and do computer work and then bill for their time, right?
Absolutely.
So to the extent that you can, yeah, I mean, you're starting a company, but to the extent that you can talk publicly, how else do you envision a product like this or this product being used by non-surgeons?
Yeah, we've gotten the intellectual property patents all, so we're good. So I can talk about it. So basically, this is my passion. This is why I'm doing it. I really have seen a lot of learners suffer in this space that don't have a voice, and I've seen as the more I've dived into it, I've seen even more and more the fraud part of it, and how we need a better system for eliminating fraud in research. And frankly, I think a lot of the current pushback on science, we deserve a little bit as scientists because we've been sloppy. We give as a field, we give grants and awards not always on merit, but for political reasons or friendships. And I think we can be more transparent and more objective in the evaluation of our work, and we can be more honest. So that's a part of it, and that's my core, and that's why I'm trying to do it. But it became very clear when I would bring up these other ideas for all the business, the venture capitalist firm, all the or the fundraising, that the massive economic implications of this are way beyond clinical medicine. So, for example, if anyone that's worked with had attorneys do work for them, you get a bill at the end and it's X amount of dollars. Well, most of the time that bill is like being charging you for like the senior partner's time per hour. Let's say it's $1,000. But a lot of that work that's being done is by their for first year associates, paralegals do tons of it. They're like our PAs, right? We get a lot of credit for the work the PAs do. And so the idea of this is that for, let's say, for law, you get a bill, but you actually have this triple helix encrypted, blockchain protected product where you can go see what they did and what time and how much time was spent. And we'd like to see just more of accountability with that. And so there's the law part of it. Pretty much any major industry that is working on a computer, like you said, there's obviously the remote work from home stuff that you can use. Anytime you have a consulting company come in, they do that with hospitals all the time. You want to be able to see what you're getting billed for and like what actually is happening. There's a lot of Fiverr, different sites where you like subcontract business work out. You can think of a lot of white collar crime with accounting, fraud, all these kinds of things. So really, all the investors and the venture capitalists were really looking at this down the road, and in 2 to 5 years, we're going to focus on our core and on the message and why this is a passion project for me of like fixing science, fixing all the research that goes on in neurosurgery, and like really cleaning it up is how I would kind of put it, and making it more valid, more something you can trust on. But in the bigger scheme of things, we're talking about major implications and revolutionizing the fields of law, of education. I like reading in the news each week about the professors are mad because the college kids are writing all their papers with chat gpt. So then the college professors started grading all their papers with chat gpt. So some are going back to blue books now to eliminate the whole problem. Well, let's just use the technologies we have responsibly and say, okay, you have to use triple helix when you're doing your work, and the professors have to use it when they're grading their work. And it's not an easy thing to game, because if you're going to sit there and be like, oh, I'm going to game this product and like sit on my computer for 10 hours, well, we keep track of what you produce, so that's not going to help you, because you're all of a sudden you're going to be seen as someone really slow. It took you 10 hours to write those 2 sentences. Like, that's not good. I don't care how good those sentences are. So this is going to revolutionize education on the college landscape. Like, my children go to private school. We spend a lot of money on that. We value their education. I want to see what their homework schedule every Sunday night. I want to review what their homework was like and what did they spend their time on. My son just got he didn't get a 95 on his test. He got an 85. So how much time did he spend? He said he studied. What does that mean? So this is like a whole bunch of applications of where we don't have a good way to measure right now. And if you can't, it's hard to fix something if you can't measure it and you don't have data, right? So all of a sudden, there's all these different industries where we spend a lot of money for some sort of period of time, which is a little bit of a black box. We don't have good value or sense of like what went into that. This will have ramifications for changing all of that. I've talked to people within auditing, different white collar crime within accounting in different fields, where this is going to really, once this is up and running and operational, it's going to really fix that entire area. And so we're excited, and the business part of the people and investors are way more excited even of that than the initial part of it, which is kind of our core and what we're sticking with. But that's the kind of the bigger scope and long term area of all this engineering, where you have people, engineers are very loose schedules, and you don't know what they're doing during that time.
Yeah.
Something you have them, you can turn on and document the work that you're doing. When we were in Seattle, Amazon would have these annual reviews, and they would have to fire a certain percentage of their employees, and like, now we have a system that can track the work that people are doing. And a lot of the people that are really good at group work, or like, they're not good at taking credit for it, or there's different skill sets. And so
Yeah.
traditionally in the workplace and throughout time, the people that have made amazing contributions into like a group project don't get credit for it invariably, because someone's good about speaking up, or doing the social part of it. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, we haven't talked about this. I'm a psychology background, but yeah, the
Mhm.
kind of person who's good at getting things done has a very different personality and skill set than the kind of person who's good at running a meeting and accruing credit for things getting done. But that's why this venture that you're undertaking is the kind of project that really does speak to my heart, because like I told you, at first I heard it and I thought this is a Black Mirror episode waiting to happen. But in reality, the worst case scenario, the best case scenario is you bring this product to market, it's massively successful, it cleans things up, and you make a bunch of money. The worst case scenario for this product is you bring it to market, maybe it's not viable and the business doesn't take off for you, but the worst case scenario, you've entered this into the conversation, right? And
Oh,
so
worst case
it's kind of
scenario
like
is
it's
win.
kind of like a Pandora's box scenario where we've had screen record for decades, but now you're demonstrating that, oh yeah, we have AI, we can easily make products like this. Things can not just be recorded and then you make a human go through every screen.
Exactly.
We can easily write a product to track this, quantize it, present it in beautiful graphics. So I'm sure this product will do very well because the
It's
graphics
not a
are beautiful,
genius
easy to use.
idea. It was genius timing. And
It,
I happen to
there you
be
have it.
we just had these avant-garde awards right now, and I think the greatest like achievement of my career, like I could basically like retire now, is like being in the top 1% with all these people on here who are like luminaries in the field. Like I on my
Wow.
if my professional CV, I'm done. Like that's as good as it could ever be, because I'm
Yeah.
definitely a black sheep on this list, but I only speak to that right now because it put me in a unique situation where I was writing as much as a lot. We were writing and we were very productive, and so I'd been doing that for 7 years with students, residents. I was really in the weeds, and I edited all my own papers, was in the weeds seeing all this. And then this Harvard Stanford thing came that had to coincide with the first time in 15 years in my life I had a couple months to just think, which a whole nother, tangent for another day is what would we do as neurosurgeons if we could take a couple months off and think and have time
Yeah.
to, because we don't, we're busy. In academia, we're super busy. In private, it's busy in a whole different sense. So what kind of other contributions if we could have time to really sit there, have nothing else going on, blocked out, and really think? Because I had about 6 weeks to do that in between my transition, and I had a couple of different patents that came out of that period: the arms race control score, this separate work, and some other stuff. So that is really
Yeah.
powerful for that. So, but with this,
That's so that's so funny. I was for no reason, I read the Wikipedia article for William Halstead today, and
mhm,
I think in his life history and career history, it used the phrase, he was at a very fortuitous time in medicine at least
exactly,
5 times where it just happened to be that this was being introduced, and so
totally
there really is something to the timing, and then I will also say, random plug, but strong plug, residents, if you have the opportunity to go to the run course in Woods Hole, it's
fantastic.
not 6 weeks, but during residency, that's a week where there's lectures during the day, but you're in Massachusetts on the water, it's beautiful. That is a time, at least for me in my residency, that was a week like you just described, where I could kind of sit back, you're away from your service, you're so far physically removed from residency. That
Totally.
just happened to be a time for me where I kind of sat back and thought about things and figured out a lot that I wanted to do with the rest of my residency and career. So you talking about having that time to kind of just really think about stuff. Um, that is very important. Residents, go to the run course if you can, but it's amazing to see now the second big idea that has come out of that time you had to sit and think, that we've talked about on the show. So I really can't wait to see what comes of this one. The arms race control score has already started to make a splash at our own specialty, and so please do keep us apprised of how it goes with Triple Helix.
Will
I
do.
know we talked briefly in our last conversation about your funding for this.
Yeah.
You are, I think, open to investors. If anyone listening
Yeah,
wants
they
to
can
do at
always
least,
you can always reach out. I think these venture capital deals take a while to finalize, and there's a couple leaders within neurosurgery. I'm not going to get into names tonight because it's not, but that are looking at how to partner. And it basically the reception's been extremely positive. It's about the perfect thing that you would want to like try to raise funds for. It's a product that academic neurosurgeons who usually have some disposable income understand and appreciate and love right away. And most of the talks, it was a little nerve wracking the very first like prominent chair I took it to, but it was such a positive reception there that from that point on, it was pretty comfortable. And so shared it with a bunch of leaders, and everyone's been super positive and has received it really well. And that's just made it easier and easier. And like I said, the analogy I'll kind of use is the arms race control score was like bringing a match or a candle to a caveman or cavewoman. And it was like such a great response that it really gave me a lot of confidence because this is like installing electricity in a light switch. I mean, this really can, revolutionize research and really all kinds of work in a way that was never really possible before.
yeah. Well, Dr. Bowers, thank you so much for coming back on the show, sharing, as I said, another product of your mind with us. Very excited to see where this goes. The best luck to you with this venture, both as an academic and as a businessman in this one. And I would like to point out, we're on camera for this, so it is clear this was you and I 100% for 30 minutes constructing this podcast. So,
Exactly.
Dr. Bowers, thank you so much. For anyone watching, listening, link to our prior conversation will be in the show notes, as well as a few figures kind of showing graphically what this product looked like. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
No problem. They have my contact. You can post it on there, but my cell phone and my email, and happy to talk to anyone about it anytime. And I hopefully we'll have the MVP, and we've had a bunch of like half a dozen centers already committed to the first study of it, which is going to be everybody using it for their labs once we have the MVP and we launch, and then that's getting written up and submitted to a New England journal to document this new way to verify research that's been done.
Wow. Congratulations and best of luck.
Thanks. Appreciate your time. Take care.